Yep, that hurt. What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to Drive Top Cars. My name is Ben, and today we're going to be working on the E63 Amg. We're going to be doing a routine service, the spark plugs. If you haven't seen the other video I did on spark plugs on the Maserati, it should be right here, or maybe it's right here. One of those sides. But today we're going to be doing it on the E63 Amg. So it should be a pretty straightforward procedure, just like the other one. And let's get to it. All right, so we have to move just a few things on this one to access the spark plugs. They're under the two air boxes. So I'm going to remove the intake boot, the air boxes, and these vents here. All right, so everything needed to do this job are the spark plugs, your gap gauge, a 14mm socket, 1/4 inch socket, a T25 bit socket, extension, a ratchet, and a contact grease for the boot that goes on top of the spark plugs. All right, first thing to do is to remove the air box in the intake boot. So first thing, I'm going to take off the air filter housing using a 1/4 inch socket. You can use a screwdriver as well, but the socket is a little easier. Well, actually a lot easier. So loosen that up. Make sure you unplug your mass airflow sensors. I guess first thing to do is to take off your intake tubes. Just pull them forward, pull it up and pull it back. So now once you've unscrewed the clamps and unplugged your air mass flow sensor, you should be able to just pull these air filter boxes right on up. So now your coil packs are exposed. 4 on this side, 4 on that side, and you should be clear to work on it now. Nothing else should require you to move anything. So let's start. All right, so a T25 hex socket will be required to take off the coil packs. First things first is to take the coil packs off. So I'm using the T25 bit. So there's 2 bolts, one on this side, one on that side. They're not on there very tight, so you don't have to do too much. And this ratchet is probably overkill by the time you break the seal on it. So I'm just gonna go through and take the bolts off of all 4 on this side and repeat on the other side. Alright, now that we have them all off, we're going to pull them. Don't pull hard because you can't break your boot. So we're going to give it a tug. Not a tug, but just kind of gently pull it up and it pops off. So you can unplug it if you want. If you don't have to, I wouldn't. Just because these things start to get old and brittle sometimes. But if it's in your way, you might have to. So let's see what the spark plug looks like. All right, so using my 14mm socket, spark plug socket, and my extension and ratchet, we're gonna take out the first spark plug. That's in there kind of tight, all right. So some of you may be wondering why you need a spark plug socket. And what it does different than the other deep sockets is it holds on to the spark plug. That way, when you loosen it up, it's attached and you can just pull it straight out. There you can see it's holding on to it, and then you just pull it off. So in the inside, there's a little bearing that and a magnet that holds it. And you will need one for each car because each car is different. It's pretty standard sizes, maybe like 2 to 3 standard sizes, but each car may not use the same socket. So that's just a little tip. All right, so we have the first spark plug out. So you repeat that step for the next 3 on this bank and then the next 4 on the other bank. So you want to make sure that it's on there flush so you don't strip it or anything. Alright, so here are the old spark plugs. So now we're going to replace these with brand new ones. Alright, so what we're going to do now is take away these old ones. We have the new ones here. I have my gap tool here to ensure proper gappage. I don't even know if that's a word. The ideal gap, from what I read, is between 0.039 and 0.041. So my tool here, I'm going to check and see. Basically, you slide this in there. You don't want to bend anything as far as like the spark plug or anything. Or this is a spark plug, but you don't want to bend anything at the tip. But I'm just making sure that the gap is good. It should slide. I don't know if you can see that. It should slide in there. Like that. So a lot of these spark plugs come pre-gap, but I'm not 100% sure, and that's what I was told, so that's what I'm going to do. So that one's good. And I'm just going to repeat this through all of them. And they should be good. So that one's good. Good. Last one on this side. Good. So now I'm just going to reinsert these back into the slots and we should be good to go. So what I have here is the connector grease dielectric. I think I'm saying that right. Put this on the boot so it can come out easily for the next service if I still have the car by then. But it just allows for the spark plugs to slide in and out the boot easier so you don't pull the boot too hard and break it or tear it. Alright, so I'm just going to take a little screwdriver here. Put a little bit on the tip and just put it in there. Alright, so what I'm doing is putting a little bit of grease on the tip of a screwdriver. And then I'm applying it to the inside of the boot. Like this. And just smearing it around. Don't need too much. I don't know if you can see that. Don't need too much. Just enough so it doesn't. Just enough so it helps in the event that I need to take the boots off again. Put my socket on the... That's another reason why you want the spark plug socket, is because it holds your spark plug when you want to reinsert. Now I have seen where people just use the boot, put it on the boot, then put it back in there, take the boot off and then tighten it. But socket's not that expensive and it's a good investment. Put it in there carefully because you don't want to damage the tip of the spark plug. Make sure it's seated correctly. And then you want to always put it in there by hand. That way you can feel if it wasn't screwing in properly. Because if it wasn't, you'd be tearing something up. And we don't want that. Alright, so I'm just going to hand tighten them at first. Because you're going to go back and you're going to torque it to 15 foot-pounds of torque. So you don't want to forget to do that. So I'm going to leave the boot off so I don't forget that I need to torque it. So I guess I can put the grease on there after I get the spark plugs in there. So let's insert the spark plugs. So I'm just going to repeat that for each one. All right, last one. If it wasn't screwing in correctly, you should feel it relatively soon if it wasn't threaded right and when you screwed it in. That's why you don't want to use the ratchet, because you probably can't feel it as much when screwing it in, to make sure that it's correct. All right, so we have all 4 in there. Here is my torque wrench, and I have it set to 15 foot-pounds of torque. Can't really see it, but it's locked in there, and that's what we're going to use. All right, so now you want to go through each one and torque it down to 15 foot-pounds of torque, or anywhere between 15 and 18 foot-pounds of torque. I'm going to go with 15. All right, we are good. So as you notice, the boot goes on this way and the connector goes out towards the radiator. I mean, really you only can put it on one way, but just to make sure, that is a reference. So I'm just putting them on. I mean, I guess it goes without saying you put them in the same spot, but you really can only put them in the same spot. So now that they're all back on, I'm just going to tighten it up with the screws again. And that used a T25. So we just go tighten it up by hand and use the socket bit to just screw it in there. Because they're not on there very tight. I mean, the ratchet is almost overkill. You can use a screwdriver type situation. But I definitely wouldn't use any power tools or anything like that. And I'm not tightening them till I get them all in there. And they should screw in easily, so if it don't screw in easily, don't force it. You don't really want to tighten it too much, because you might have to shift it around so both holes are lined up. All right, so when you tighten these, you don't want to go too tight. Just make sure you kind of wrist tight, and we should be good. So we're all set. They're back as they should be. So now we're just going to do the other side. Same procedure. So on this side, the bolts are a little harder to get to than on the passenger side. So just be patient, take your time, and you should be okay. Oh my, so the back is really tight. So you're just gonna have to play around with it a little bit. It's hard to see, so it's kind of like all by feel. You know what's crazy? Every time I do a job, it's easy. Until that one thing that causes me to take forever. All right, since that took so long, let's start with removing that one. Be very careful with that one. You do not want to drop that. Okay, so other than this last one being very hard to get to, and kind of this one too, it's pretty easy, pretty much the same thing as the other side. So now we're gonna take off. Well, that was easy. All right, so now let's take off the first socket. Yep, that hurt. Well, that's a little weird. This one, I'm able to unscrew with my hand. That's not typically what you expect. Can't really see in there. All right, so that's a little weird. Let me see what we got going on. All right, so I'm not sure what's going on here. I hope it's not a stripped or something plug. Truly weird. All right, so I have 3 of the 4 out. As I mentioned before earlier, the third one seems to be stripped. Not sure how, maybe the previous owner did it or mechanic did it, but I am not getting anything on here. So, not sure what to do here. I'm gonna have to go to the old brain here and see what we can do. Let's see. Well, let me put the spark plugs in the other so I don't run the risk of dropping debris or something in there. All right, so we still have this third one to try to tackle. Let's see. So we have tried different bit sizes or socket sizes. Nothing seems to work thus far. This is a DIY. My first time doing the spark plugs on this car, and things happen. Just have to adjust. Push come to shove, you have 7 good spark plugs, and you can take the car now to the shop and investigate this last one that's not working, or you can continue to try to MacGyver it. That's a reference to a 80s show that was pretty awesome. But anyway, so we're gonna try to see what we can do. It's getting late. As you can see, I got my trusty shop light out. So it is getting dark. So I might revisit this tomorrow, or I might have to take it to a shop. So I shall return shortly when I come up with some more ideas.